Okay, hello everyone. So welcome to today's talk. As a film and television producer, the question Brian McLaughlin often hears is, what does a producer do anyway? In this talk, he will answer that question. Since 2005, Brian has produced 4 feature films and has developed 8 others. 2 of his films are on Amazon Prime Video. He recently developed a comedy series, which he pitched to ABC. He has also been a department head on several popular TV series. He is a member of the Producers Guild of America, and there was a 3-page article about him in the PGA's Produced By magazine. Along the way, Brian was also a visiting film professor at the University of Notre Dame and the media production advisor to General Petraeus in Afghanistan. Ladies and gentlemen, Brian McLaughlin.
Thank you very much. I would just want to let you know that I will be focusing on film today as opposed to TV, and the definitions are different there. For example, in television, the writers are generally, after the first level, or after a couple levels up, they become producers. And they take on more of the responsibilities I'll be talking about in the film world. But that's why you'll have supervising producer, co-producer, producer, co-executive producer, and then executive producer in the TV world. And they're all writers, and they have more and more responsibility of the overall show concept. One of those executive producers will be the showrunner, but there will be usually 2 or 3 other executive producers, depending on the budget for the show, how many they can afford. In the film world, there are still other titles for producer. There are associate producer, co-producer, producer, and executive producer. I'm focusing on that producer role, which is, I'll explain, but the associate and co-producers generally just do part of what the producer does. They're helping produce, whereas the executive producer in the film world usually has brought some sort of resource. Most commonly it's funding, but it could be a location, or it could be an actor that they brought in, and in exchange they got the title of executive producer, and they're generally fairly hands-off in film, as opposed to in TV, where they are the most hands-on person in the hierarchy. So, I did. Okay. That question comes up often, and it was just asked, so I wanted to make sure I covered it before I forgot. Here are the things we'll talk about. The role of the producers, how do you select projects, how do you pitch those projects to the people with the money and the distribution, how do you get that money, working with directors and actors, actual production, how do directors and producers interact, because a lot of people, including my father, do not know the difference between the two, and then selling your film in the end. It's not actually the end, because then you receive money from hopefully many, many years. One of the big things about being a producer is the soft skills that you really need. And I need is probably in quotation marks, because depending on who the producer is, these soft skills may or may not be present. But there are things that we should strive for. The first one is leadership, because the producer is the leader of the film, and I'll get into more details about that in a little bit. But leadership skills include things like decisiveness, because half of the leader not be able to make decisions about everyday things or big things like who's going to direct would not be helpful. So the producer has to be able to show many leadership skills. Decision making, integrity, honesty are all things that are part of leadership. Communication, I'm not going to get into all of them, but diplomacy is one big one that's part of leadership, and it's also extremely important in Hollywood. There are a lot of egos involved, there's a lot of money involved, and people's, you get people who are, it's just another gig, and you have people where it's the biggest thing in their career, and you have to be able to interact with all those folks. And some huge actors will have no ego at all and have no demands, and then you'll have some medium-sized actors who want everything and all the attention. So you can't treat everyone the same, but you have to treat everyone fairly, but in a way that matches who they are and who they think they Perseverance is huge in producing. Unlike pretty much everyone else involved with a movie, the producer gets paid least often. My oldest film is, I started in 2010, so I'm going to do the Mensa math, and it is about 14 years I've been working on that film. So perseverance, in that sense, is also hugely important because you're going to be staying with something for many, many years. Whereas the director will get hired into a show, an actor gets hired into a show, and they'll be there for a few months. Same with everyone on the crew. So the person who sticks with it from the first idea to the end is the producer. So perseverance is huge, and a part of that is being risk averse, because there will be periods of huge financial terror. Many periods of huge financial terror, and some of that is mitigated by getting side gigs or getting hired to produce something, or whatever it happens to be, or having friends or people have faith in you who say, I'm going to invest in your career, and here's $10,000, and when you make that film, you pay me back whatever amount you agree upon. And so there are ways to get around it, but there are other times where you're just going to be just terrified, like you've gone through layout. Like I was employed by Disney a year ago, up to about a year ago, and then they had, I was the head of the COVID department on some shows, and that ended. COVID, as you may have heard, went away completely. At least within Hollywood it did. And so that job ended, which I knew it would. But then Disney also, at the same time, had layoffs. And so getting hired into another job was nearly impossible. And as jobs started popping up, the strikes happened, and they went on for the longest of ever. And then when they ended, the holidays came, and so there's been this extremely long period that that I've had to deal with. And I'm not trying to make myself sound out like a sad case or anything, but it's been hard, financially. And that happens throughout all producers' careers, and the perseverance is if you're going to stay with it, is very important. However, I will say on the bright side, anybody who stays with it in this industry does get to a point that, as long as they keep learning and doing all the things they should do, they get to a point where they support themselves and consider themselves successful. So confidence is another huge thing. I was at one presentation where Clint Eastwood was talking, and he said, confidence exudes confidence. The person at the top of the project is running around with their head, like a chicken with their head cut off, then everyone else will feel like this is never going to work. Whereas it could be a monumental task, and if the leader is going, yeah, we got this, everyone else will feel that same way. Got to stay positive. That ties into the perseverance and everything else. Networking is huge in producing. When I did lose that job at Disney, I wrote to 350 people in the industry that I knew, like I knew personally, and they were top executives, and they were other producers, and it just and I'm a little bit on the end of the spectrum in terms of networking. I'm known for my network of people, but still, it's 350 people is a lot even for me to be able to just write to and say, hey, I'm looking for work, and half of them wrote back, and the other half, kept me in mind, I'm sure, but it's just reassuring to at least get those responses. 6 of them put me in for jobs, so that was nice too. And then I'm going to talk about, or maybe I won't, but creativity and business acumen. I was a business manager at an aerospace company for many years before becoming a film producer. Then I thought, oh wow, here's a job where I can tie in my business side and my creative side, because I got into acting as a hobby. I thought, I can tie the two together as a producer and become massively rich, which at least the first part of that has happened. Just a little pictorial of what a producer is in the eyes of the world. My friends was the first block, and what my mother thinks, what society thinks is just about the money, what the crew thinks, and I would say that no crew ever thought that was me, but what I think I do, and then what I really do. The last square is not an exaggeration. I have taken out trash. I've had trash bags burst on me. I can't say that I've actually picked up after a dog, but I look forward to that. I have picked up after a dog, but just not on the job. Producers can expect to have to do every little thing. So what do they really do? All right. I tell people probably the shorthand is the producer is the CEO of a film or is the project manager of a film. From the very first idea of this thing to the very last dollar being distributed. And then obviously this spans many, many years, ideally. They are also in charge of the business side, and that's what everyone thinks, oh, you're the money person, but also the creative side. I developed the script from the idea to going and shooting it, and then hire the director and talk with the director about what my creative vision is and what the director's creative vision is. And then usually we have 5 to a dozen films going on at once in various stages of development and production. And I actually heard the number 7 cited at a Produced By conference, and I thought, oh, that's great, because I have 8 in development right now. And it was nice to hear a successful producer say, yeah, we have 7, and that's pretty typical. And so there's a lot of juggling going on. We also create opportunity. So I told you about everyone else who comes in for a few months and does the work. That wouldn't happen if it wasn't for the producer making this thing a reality. It all starts, like I said, from the very first idea with the producer. Now writers will say, oh no, it was my idea, but okay, it's true, writers sometimes, but I like to say that writers aren't the only people who have good ideas for stories. So some of the projects that I have, most of the projects I have were ideas that I had come up with. Sometimes I hired a writer to do it, other times I wrote it myself. There's only one of the 8 projects that we're shopping around, or that we've developed, that was brought to us already as a screenplay, and that was a writer that I've worked with a lot, and he'd given me that screenplay for notes twice, and I'd give him notes back, but never thought, oh, that's something for me to produce. My producing partner read it to give notes back to him and said, I love this so much, let's do this. I thought, okay. And then we changed it completely. We actually changed the lead to be a woman, we might have changed one other character to be a woman, but we also added a family aspect to it, not a family as a viewership, but the characters were feeling more like family than they were. It's a crime story, so that's not usually a theme in crime stories. And we added redemption as a theme, so we did a lot to it. And even before we got to that, script had been a semi-finalist in the top, the Academy's screenwriting competition. So it was already great, and we did all these things to it to make it better. And so that's the part about developing these ideas that may not be fully formed. And then I talked about network a minute ago. It's really, to me, the building those relationships is the heart of what a producer does. It's something I enjoy very much. Other people are terrified of producing. Of networking. Other people don't. Other producers, very successful ones, never get out of their house or their office to go meet new people, whereas I do it on at least a weekly basis, and this weekend is no exception. So here are some of the things that we do. The idea, we come up with an idea, we get the script made, or we buy the script or whatever. We set up the schedule, we do a budget, get the funding, hire the director, and not just hire it, but having to select a director from the thousands of directors that are out there. Same thing with actors. Crew, location, set design, wardrobe. We're not going to cover all this today. But you can see there's a lot going on, and there's another slide at the end that covers just as many that I didn't get to mention at all. The biggest thing is producers produce, therefore the word. And you might say, duh. I don't know if you guys would say that exact word, but duh is why would I want to say that? And I say it specifically because I've met so many producers, or people who call themselves producers, and I say to them, well, what have you produced? Oh, nothing yet. I say, oh, okay, not everyone has done anything yet, but so what are you working on? What have you developed? Oh, I got some ideas, but nothing I've really developed. I'm like, there has to be some level of effort before you can start calling yourself that. It's like saying someone saying they're a writer. I say, oh, what have you written? Nothing is on the paper yet. Okay, well, I'm not going to argue with them, but it's still, producers have to produce. And part of that starts with networking. The picture of that huge crowd is at a Producers Guild, a really cool event that they have every year, and they're going to have next Saturday, it's a brunch with the one producer from each of the films that is nominated for Best Picture, and they come and they talk about their films, and it is such a cool event because you get to hear the top producers of the year talking about what it took to get their film made and the hurdles they had and the inspiration and all that stuff. And that in the circle is my producing partner and I. As you can recognize, even without the circle, I'm sure you just probably there. But I use it as a networking example because the room is filled with 500, 700 other producers, all of them members of the Producers Guild. And it's one of the events every year that I love where I see my fellow producers, many of them, we're running into again for the first time since a year ago. At that event once, I don't know how many years ago it was, about 5 years ago, I was in the brunch line because it's free food. I go to everything that has free food and free drinks and free parking is the troika. If I get those three things, I'm happy. And the person across the brunch line from me, it was a buffet, you were served television stuff, and she says, "Hey, are you Brian McLaughlin?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course I'm right." And no, I really said, "Yeah, how did you know that?" Because we didn't know each other. And she said, "This video that you did, or this panel you did a few years ago that was videoed, and that video is online for the Producers Guild members to see. There's a video on networking." She goes, "I tell every mentee I have to watch that video. So I've seen you, I don't know how many times, over and over again, I've seen you moderating this panel on networking." And she was an executive vice president, is an executive vice president at Sony. And she said, she had me over to Sony to the executive dining room for lunch about a few weeks later. And we've been in touch ever since. She's helped me with job applications there. She hired one of my friends. And that was because I met her at brunch at this event, rather than sleeping in on a Saturday morning, which I love doing.
What is required to be in the Producers Guild?
It depends on what area of filmmaking you come up from, but for feature films, it's 2 feature films that you produce. Well, 2 feature films that have been released, at least nationally, which is any of the streaming platforms really, but it's not like just put it on YouTube. TV, it's I think 13 episodes, or it's a certain number of hours, and then new media has other requirements. And I said that you produce, but really it's any position from, I think it's assistant production coordinator up to executive producer, and a lot of things in between and off to the sides, like special effects producer or coordinator. So there's a bunch of positions that qualify you for the Producers Guild also. But for me, it was 2 feature films. I'd actually done 4 by then, but 2 of them were all I needed. And it's been one of the greatest organizations in terms of my career and connections and learning, because they have many great events for learning, like this one. Was there another question? Okay. Yes.
To follow up on that one, knowing how the Actors Guild and Hollywood all goes together.
Yeah.
How were you able to produce before you're a member of the Producers Guild?
So unlike the Producers Guild is not a union, despite the name. So it's not like Screen Actors Guild and other unions where you have to be a member before you can do the work. I can go out and produce something independently, like we did, and then get it sold. And the selling part is the key. Amazon Plus has two of my not Amazon Plus, Amazon Prime has 2 of my films, and so that's the validation that the Producers Guild looks for. Whereas with the unions, I'm never sure how you do that. How you have to be a member to be a member to get the work. But there are ways apparently, and I'm not all that familiar with it. But for the Screen Actors Guild, you can get hired without being a union member. Once I think, and then after that, if you get hired again for a union show, you have to join. So you have two positions or 2 roles you can cast in. The second one you have to join, so you can be non-union until you aren't. So yeah. Let's see, do stuff. Kind of got to that. You really just can't talk about being a producer. Keep learning, hugely important. A lot of people neglect that, I think. Have ideas for films, for anything else, like ideas for getting funding, ideas for directors, and that sort of thing. Funding is there. Math, I don't remember why I put math in there, but I like math. And but there is a lot of math involved. You have to do projections on revenue. You have to do the budget. You have to, even the scheduling requires math. And finding comparable films so as you pitch your project. So there's math involved in that in terms of like how well did those films do and how long ago was it and things like that. A lot of planning. We are the planners of the show. And let's go is what that stands for. Yeah.
As producer, do you get residuals?
Hopefully. That is, I still get, for those 2 films on Amazon, I get a couple $100 a year. And, yeah. But ideally you get more than that. And it really depends on the negotiations you do when you're selling the film. The deals you make. So with a streamer like Netflix, there's usually no residuals because their policy is to just pay outright. There's no box office involved with Netflix because generally they don't release their films theatrically, so there wouldn't be residuals. But I think that you could conceivably say, well, for my deal, I want to have these milestone payments. When we have this many views, then we get this much money. And so that was part of the contracts that just happened. But it's not specifically called residual, or maybe it is, but it's not what traditional residuals were, which was a percentage of the box office. But it has to do with number of views and that sort of thing.
What's a realistic number of views to target for Netflix?
I don't know. I haven't really done the research on that.
7,000?
I mean, if it's a little independent film, like the 2 that we have out there, we get like 60 views on Amazon a year or 100 views a year, and that's 10, 12 years into it. But if you want to make money, it would have to be in I would say the tens of thousands, I think. All right, so now that you have a feel generally for what a producer does, let's go through some of the steps along the way. Selecting the projects is the first thing. And I have this confused look on my face because I was trying to find what the clock was on this. So some of the criteria. Now these criteria actually weren't made up by me. One of my favorite producers, Kathy Schulman, who did Crash and many other. She also did the Woman King. I always have to pause because I think it's Warrior King, but Woman King that came out I think 2 years ago. She did that one. She's the one who talked about these criteria in a talk she gave. Something you'll be interested in for many years. I already talked to you about how long these things take. You can't stop thinking about it. In the screenwriting presentation I gave this morning, that was also one of the criteria I feel like writers should also think about or consider. I don't want to be redundant there. There's some sort of universal truth. You look at Barbie, kind of the balance between the genders is something that we can all, somehow, we're all touched by in some way. I added elevate the genre because I feel like if you're making another zombie movie or another horror movie, you should somehow add something to it that makes it different, that lifts it up a little bit. This crime story I told you about, we've elevated it by adding these themes of family and redemption in it. We also made this real badass, and this isn't so unique, but this real badass main character, we made it a woman. And the character's name had been Reno, and it became Rena. And I like it so much better that way. You can state what it's about. It's from Kathy, but I like using this too because I've heard so many people tell me about their project, and 10 minutes later they're still telling me. I'm like, you gotta narrow that down a bit. The audience will care. When I first saw a billboard for Oppenheimer, I thought, who cared? And actually, the person I was riding with was a 20-something-year-old. I was given a ride to the airport, and I worked with her for the weekend, and she's like, who's Oppenheimer? I'm like, exactly. Now, I didn't know at the time that I would be wrong in terms of how well it would do, but I also think it did really well because of Barbie and the whole Barbenheimer thing. Of course, it did well also because Christopher Nolan did it, and the lead actors were so great. But just the topic itself, I was thinking, why? Why do we need? I think we know that story. I was wrong. at least one strong demographic factor. So that could be that they talk about quadrants, which are ages and genders. So is it kids or adults? Is it male or female generally? But so at least one of those areas is nice, but it could be other demographic factors. The resume of the writer, I don't think Kathy talked about this one, but that's one thing I look at. Like, it's easier to sell a project if I can say the writer was this great, has this track record of success. And then something that lots of people talk about is the story is the inspiration for taking you 7 years on this project. It's the story that you look at it and you really love. Bradley?
The writer of the screenplay, or what?
Both of them, but oh, you're talking about the resume? Yeah, the screenplay writer. So, yeah, not, like if it's a book adaptation, I'm not talking about that writer, I'm talking about the writer who adapted into a screenplay. And then you have to be inspired by the story. Bradley Cooper just did this film Maestro about Leonard Bernstein, I think. And I thought, why do we need to have another story about a famous person who's not faithful to his marriage? But Bradley Cooper loved it, and he worked on it for, I think, 8 years or something, 13 years, something like that, before he got it to the screen. Okay, so once you pick a project, you've got to pitch it to lots of people who can finance it, people who will distribute it, to the directors, to the actors, just anyone who's going to be involved in it. I'm going to focus on the money side, the business getting it funded, and if you're pitching to a studio or a network, you don't have to worry so much about the business side. In fact, I talked to a guy last week who I was consulting with. I said, take all the stuff about marketing. That's their job. They understand that a lot better than you and I do. Take that out, and we're going to talk about the creative side only. But if you're talking to an independent investor, then you have to show them that you understand the business side and you've thought it all through and that it makes sense. I think, as in any industry, the business plan, everyone understands the numbers are kind of made up. It's not really what's going to happen, but it really just shows that you have an understanding of the money. And then when you pitch, you have to ask them to fund it or to greenlight it or whatever it has to be. People go into these meetings and it ends with, okay, hey, thanks, that's really great, thank you very much. And they never say, do you want to give it, please give me the money. It sounds maybe a little funny, but it's the truth. That's the hardest part for people to add to the pitch. When you're pitching to studios or big production companies, it's not ask for the money, it's ask them to read your screenplay. Because that's the big result of the pitch meeting there. Because if they read the screenplay, they can like it. If they don't read the screenplay, it's done with them. You're excited about this project, so show them you're excited. Get them excited too. That's the biggest thing. And if it's harder. This is why we have producers in addition to writers. Writers can't go into a room and get people excited. It's just the nature of being a writer. Whereas a producer gets excited about everything. And so you got to go in and get everyone excited about why you are so passionate about this project and why they should be too, and why it's you that should be making it rather than anybody else. And then also understand the investor's perspective, that they're looking for, well, first of all, you might say, oh, they're rich, they've got the money. Yeah, but all of their money is tied up somewhere. And so you have to get them to understand why they should take it out of wherever it is and put it into your film. And they're also looking for return on investment, and you don't know if they're looking for 5 times their investment or 3 times, but you have to at least give them a number that they might be able to say, okay, that works for me. And I'm saying that because you can't just get them all excited about the creative side. They need to get excited about the business side if you're talking about an investor. And silence is golden means once you've given your pitch, let them be the first one. I like to say the first one to talk loses. It's a negative way of saying it, but the second one to talk, let's say, wins. So if you can wait for them to speak, it's hard for someone to say no usually. So if you wait for them to say, the human desire is to talk your way through the silence. Like, silence is uncomfortable, but you gotta let them be the first one to speak to win in the negotiation. So what do they usually ask for before they'll fund something? They want a great script, and it has to be finished. You can't be pitching something and saying, oh, we got another rewrite coming, which I hear a lot, and because they're going to say, well, come back to me then. It's like, it's insulting to say, please read my unfinished script. It's great if you could have at least a lead actor attached, or a name actor who's not in the lead. You have to have a budget that's already been ironed out, and the schedule. In the film world, for the last 20 years or so, tax credits have been important. So there are a lot of locations around the country and around the world that offer tax incentives to bring a project there, so they'll get their folks hired. And you have to have an understanding of that. I think it's a little bit short-sighted because Arizona, until recently, did not have a tax, or for many years did not have a tax credit, and yet you could make a film there more cheaply than in California because all their costs are lower. So, but people would say, no, they don't have a tax credit, we're not going to shoot there. So sales agents are the international distributors are domestic. So get estimates from them or commitment from them that they're going to distribute your film, and they'll tell you about how much they think it's going to make. Maybe if it's a huge film, you might want to get a producer involved that is more experienced than you are, and sometimes I'm saying that, and that's me, that's the person I'm talking about, if I'm talking to a less accomplished producer, but sometimes I'm the less accomplished one, and so I'm talking about getting someone else involved. I used to think that was a real strong requirement, but then I had an event with George Clooney's producing partner, Grant Heslov, and I asked him that question, and he goes, no, you've already done 4 features. Making a $10 million film is just the same work, it's just more money. So you don't need someone else. And that was nice of him to say, because I never worried about it again, and it never came up in a meeting where I was pitching a project. They never said, you don't have enough experience. So that was good. It was reassuring. So these attachments that I'm talking about, when I mentioned the actors, people say, oh, you can't attach an actor until you have money, you can't get money until you have an actor. Well, it's not 100% true, because a lot of people go out and they get an actor attached based on a great script, maybe a great director, or at least a desirable director, or maybe just because they like me or whoever the producer is. So go ahead and ask. Let them say no. I reached out to Kevin Hart once, and his agent wrote back, said, well, how much are you offering? And so he didn't say no. And then apparently I lowballed him too much, and I thought I was supposed to come in low, but I never heard back. But it doesn't hurt, and it didn't hurt to ask. I like to get a director attached before the actor and let the director be involved in who the actor is going to be. Unless I'm talking to someone who's, somehow I can get a real A-list actor that no director is really going to argue with. And in that case, I probably need to attach the director to get the funding. That actor would probably get the door open. It's easier to reach out to a manager than an agent. Agents have hundreds of clients, managers have dozens. And managers are more interested in the careers of their clients than agents are. So reach out to I feel that it's easier to reach out to the managers.
So actors have both.
They often do, they usually do. And that's because of what I just said, in terms of one side is managing their career, and the other one is getting them, the agent has to be involved in the job, in the contractual getting the job. So the agent is the employment agency for actors, whereas the manager is not legally allowed to do that. No, they're not legally allowed to produce, I'm sorry. So I don't know what the manager has to do. I don't know if a manager can actually do the paperwork, I forget. But they do generally have both. What's that? Some can. Some do that. I would say most don't. It's a lot of responsibility. Plus, people do move from manager or agent back and forth, to a new manager. And so somebody's been managing your money. It's harder to leave that person. So I think most of them have a financial advisor that is separate. Also, this is just a little technical thing. Actors love to have some sort of great entrance into the film, their first moment, a moment where their character has a change of, fortune or a change of heart or some sort of moment in there that they can really grab onto as an actor. And then, to a lesser degree, a big exit. Whether that's this triumphant moment at the end with Rocky jumping up and down in the ring or dying a horrible death. Maybe not as much that, but some sort of exit. And then ask I said that Kevin Hart's agent or manager, whatever it was, wanted me to make an offer, and I said, so what is this quote? And the quote is, basically it's what is he currently making right now? And at the time, Kevin had just done Jumanji, and it was a huge number that the guy gave me. But the 3 films before that were smaller projects, and I know that he would have done it for probably $5 million. I think I offered 2 or 3, and so I got waived off. But you can ask for that number, and they're supposed to give it to you. Now, that doesn't mean they're not going to inflate it a bit, like I said, him using an atypical number, but it was still, I'm sure, a true number. It was just that he was picking and choosing. He was cherry picking a bit.
What's a turn scene?
A turn scene is like something that happens in the course of the film that maybe the person has been betrayed or betrays someone, or there's something that is not just going along doing the same old thing they've been doing throughout the whole film. So it's a big moment for the actor. Something they can really show their acting ability. So if you do develop a relationship with an actor or a director or a writer, sometimes an editor or a cinematographer, and you can keep that going for years, that is one of the most consistent elements of success throughout a career. So I've worked with the same writer on like 5 films, and he's a great writer, and I can always go to him. But I don't go to him for a family film, so there's some limitations. He does like grittier things. So then, once you've done all that and you've hired everyone, I was going to talk about directors. I think I eliminated the slide about directors, choosing the directors. But the directors were in here too. The attachments, all this includes directors too. And there's a lot of research I put in to figure out who the best director is. And reaching out to them is tricky. It's not tricky. They're booked. If they're good director, chances are they're working on a project already. So that's a tricky thing. A lot of directors only work on their own projects, or they work with the same producers over and over. So it's unbelievably challenging to find the right director for your project. And I'm actually organizing a panel for the Producers Guild on how to find the right director for your project. And it's hard to find speakers for that panel because I had certain criteria about it. It has to be someone who works with different producers. So I have 2 producers and 1 director for the panel. I'm just giving up on the second director, and I'm moving ahead with it. All right, then you get into production. You've picked a project, you've gotten it written, you've attached some of the key people, then you start hiring the rest of the cast and crew, and you go into production. What's your job there as a producer? Well, you're the firefighter. You're the one who's putting out, who's anticipating and hopefully avoiding, but if not, overcoming whatever problems may arise. You let the director handle the creative stuff. You let the assistant director, which despite title, has really nothing to do with the director, except that they're running, that person's running the crew, making sure we're staying on schedule, get everything done. They do have to work with the director, but it's not helping them direct. Know your strengths and weaknesses. I don't know anything about cameras and lighting, so I'm not going to start jumping in unless I see something that's really obvious. I was producing a short film in November, and there was this special effects shot that we're doing where the actor had to go in front of it, between the camera and a mirror, clear the mirror, stop and deliver her lines. And we couldn't see her reflection in the mirror until she had cleared the mirror, or the effect wasn't going to work, because we're going to shoot the reflection later. So it was going to be erased out in that shot. And I noticed on the second take that she was appearing in the reflection before she was clearing the frame. She was still blocking the camera, part of the mirror. And I told the director that, and she jumped all over me. Because she was really stressed out about the camera losing battery. And she said, "Just trust me, it's going to work." And then the very next take, she noticed that I was right. She apologized. But I don't usually know camera stuff, so I was a little gun shy to say it, but I still said it, and thankfully I was right. But I did know that was my weakness, and so I was holding back a little bit. but also know your strengths. Like if you're great at working with people, motivating people, like in that shoot, the assistant director kept on coming to me all nervous. She's when the director keeps adding shots. I don't know if we're gonna have any time. I go, don't worry, we'll get it done. And then I just relaxed him, And he was worried that I was gonna be mad at him about us not keeping on schedule, but instead I just relaxed him, and that's one thing I do pretty well. Hire the best people. Some people are just too insecure to hire people who are better than them, but that's not how you get the best product. You just have to hire the best people, and you can be the dumbest person in the room, and that'll be great, because the rest of the people are smarter than you. Delegate and follow up. Don't do everything yourself is the point of that, but also make sure you follow up with people without micromanaging. Everybody's responsible for safety. As we found out on that Alex Baldwin film. Okay, so how do you work with the director? My role as the producer depends on how much experience the director has. If it's a newer director, I'm going to be more hands-on. If it's a more experienced director, I'm going to let them run more. My main job, though, is to help the director do well. And if they need help, I'll step in, but otherwise I'll let them run with it. We've already talked, the director and I, about the vision, and we've come to an agreement, and hopefully the director has come up with ideas that I never had, and I love them. So now my job is to make sure that happens on the screen. And usually that has to do with hiring the right crew and getting the right resources and the time to that director. About the time. But the other thing that's important is that my job is to keep all the other outside distractions away from the director and the actors. One of my films, the executive producer, the guy who was funding the film, didn't know anything about filmmaking and yet wanted to sit right next to the director and tell him everything to do. And that executive producer and I had many conversations, and myself, the other producer, and our assistant director, and the director, we all knew what a clash we were having with that executive producer, and nobody else on set knew, because we kept it amongst ourselves. We didn't let anyone else get stressed out about it. It was my worst experience at producing, but everyone else had a good time because we took on that burden and kept it away from everyone else. Unfortunately, the director had to see it, but everyone else was like, oh, this has been so much fun. All right, so then you've made your film, and you have to sell it.
You have to edit it first.
That's true. So I'm skipping over post-production, but that is the next thing. You get it edited, you get the sound, the colors corrected, you get the sound done, you get music in there. There's more to it, but we can't go over all of that. You can sell your film up front, as I kind of mentioned a little bit. You might be able to sell it once you have some footage, because sometimes distributors have said, yeah, once you get some footage, send it to us, then we'll let you know. I think at that point you might as well wait for it to be done and then show them the best possible product you have. But financially, it's best if you could sell it ahead of time, because then you don't have to raise as much money, because you get money from the distributor. But if you make a great film, you can sell it for more. So there are pros and cons. Aim high, meaning don't go to a low budget distributor. Go to the studios and pitch your film there first, and then to the mini majors, as we call them, which is Lionsgate and Amazon, Netflix, and Hulu and places like that. There are others, I'm just forgetting. And then if they say no, you keep working your way down till you find who will distribute it. I love getting a theatrical release, and after that, also think about streaming, getting it out there so everyone who doesn't like to go to movie theaters can see it in the comfort of their home, and plus try to get it shown around the world. This is all part of aiming high, but also just part of just the business sense of getting your films out there and getting the money back. Somebody asked a question at Friday's presentation with the other filmmakers about what if you don't trust, what if you get cheated by your distributor? Well, what I do is I look and see what other films have been distributed by this person up until now, or this company, and I write to the producers and say, hey, how did they treat you? Like, did you get your money from them? Blah, blah, blah. And producers are generally pretty good about giving that information. So you can also audit their records. It's always in the contract that you have the right to, once a year, I think, maybe it's once every 2 years, depending on the contract, go in and look at their records and make sure they're not cheating you, and you just have to do it. You have to pay for an auditor, unless you have that experience yourself, but if you feel like you're not getting all your money, then take advantage of that right. Okay, and here's that slide I promised you, all this other stuff that producers do. So that's why I couldn't get into post, and I couldn't get into like everything else that goes on, because this is a semester-long class that I taught at Notre Dame, and then my students called it story time with Brian, because I told a lot of practical first-hand experience stories in my classes, but they loved it. It really helped them, I think. So another thing is going the extra mile. Give a presentation like that. These are all just photos of things I did besides producing that helped me get my name out there and helped me get a reputation. That's Norman Lear up in the corner. Unfortunately, he just passed away recently. Right next to him is Suzanne Todd, who at the time had just released the first Bad Moms movie, but she also did Austin Power films, the Alice in Wonderland films, and Memento. I did an article in the Hollywood Reporter. That bottom center is that networking panel I mentioned. The guy who's on the black guy, let's just say that, he's Kevin Hart's president of film and television, and he and I are still friends. We were friends before this, but yeah. So, any questions then? Of course, I put this stuff up here in case anybody wants to connect with me at any time after this. I didn't see who was first, but no, wait, you guys can call about it. We'll get back to you. Go ahead.
I just have a comment, something that I kind of sort of experienced myself. A mistake that producers should never make is do not greenlight your picture until your financing is locked.
Yeah.
That's what killed intermedia.
Yeah.
And they got stuck with the pay or play cost when the financing fell out. They didn't have the money to pay.
It's hard to not be really enthusiastic and say, we've got this deal, let's go, and then until you really do have a deal, you don't have a deal, and you can get burned that way. Even though in my second film I went into production before we had all the money for post, but at least we could pay for production. I'm right here, the next
Tell
right
us
behind
the
you.
films that you've done.
What about it?
What are the films that you've
So
done?
the two on Amazon are called Good Boy, which you have to be careful with because there are 3 good boys on there. Ours has I can send you the link here, but ours has an orange thing with a chain, which I hate. The distributor came up with that. Another one's called DIY, which is a coming-of-age drama. And then the first one I did is called Red 71, which you can find on YouTube or DVD, and free on YouTube because the director just wanted everyone to be able to see it and put it up there. And the one that I mentioned with his horrible experience was called Trade-In, which is a sophomore comedy, which I didn't like. But anyway, but I'll get what next after you, but right here.
Okay, what's the difference between a producer and an executive producer?
I don't know if you came in late, but on a film, the executive producer the producer runs everything.
Right.
The executive producer has brought in some resource, usually funding, but it could be an actor, it could be a location or something like that. Yeah.
They're pitching to like the largest studios. Do you have to reach a certain level before they'll even hear you? Or
Nope.
do they have like a hierarchy of people to hear the lesser, the medium, and the best? Or?
I write whoever I want to. and I say that with a little, I don't mean to sound arrogant. I don't know why people have given me meetings every time I'm asked. Maybe it's because I'm a Producer Guild member. Maybe it's whatever. Maybe I write a good email.
People that are giving you meetings, is it only one set of people that do the acquisition?
There's a department it's a development department. So I look for a vice president of development usually. There are managers and directors of development, and you can write to them also. I think if you're a brand new producer or it's your first project, I would probably recommend going down the hierarchy a bit. But it doesn't hurt to write and ask. And if you followed up a couple times, nobody's replied, then write to someone else down the line. Most people are not so arrogant to think they're unapproachable. I think in my experience, most people will reply and let you know if they're interested or not. Otherwise, in my whole networking thing, the reason I'm out there networking is so I have those connections and I can say, hey, we met at this event. I've got this project that someone just brought to me. Can I tell you about it? And the other day I wrote to the head of television at think it's Dan Lynn's company or Justin Lin, I get them mixed up. They're doing a Avatar: The Last Airbender live action series, and I wanted to go to the premiere, so I just wrote to the highest person in their TV department, and she wrote back like an hour later and she said no, but it was still, she replied. And now, after I see it, I'm gonna write back to her and tell her I love the thing if I did love it, and then I'm gonna say, hey, can I have an informational meeting with you? And then boom, I know her too. So that's the way I do it anyway. Yes.
Afterwards, is it more the producer who does well financially or more the executive producer?
It should kind of parallel, because after the executive producer gets repaid plus whatever hurdle rate, which is like additional 20% or 10%, whatever you agree to, then they split it. So the executive producer gets a little bit more, but generally after that, they split it 50-50. So hopefully everybody gets it. Yes?
You're talking about the contracts you have, are those pretty much boilerplate, or do you hire a attorney right at the beginning to write up the contract?
Well, I had many years as a business manager dealing with contracts before I became a producer, so I tend to just take a contract that I've used before, that I have from the Producers Guild or otherwise found online, and I look through it and I say, well, I'll change it to however I feel like it needs to be. My producing partner is the same way. She's run a business for many years. But the smart answer is you get a lawyer. It's just that if you have money, you get a lawyer. If you don't have money, just do it yourself. Like when I start dealing with bigger dollar deals, I'll absolutely will have a lawyer.
One of the things we've noticed in recent theatrical releases we've gone out and seen in the theater is just too many producers and production companies. It seems like 2 minutes to get through the whole.
Well, I'm going to tell you a secret about that is that the more you see, the more trouble they have getting it funded, and therefore, the more questionable that content might be. I mean, I think Bradley Cooper's film I told you about was one of those. I think, if I remember right. I'm like, oh, this is not a good sign. Same thing with writers. If you see a bunch of writers listed, it means they've done a whole bunch of rewrites. But yeah. But there will always be a certain number of them, because more and more in Hollywood, those companies that finance films want to not take on all the risk. And they know they're giving up some of the profit too. They're splitting it, but they want to just protect their risk side more. But there are companies too who fund the whole thing. Foreign films or films shot foreign, which could be American films. A lot of times you'll see the governmental agencies that support with grants those films, which is really great. But we don't have that here. Anybody else? Yes.
This may not, my question may not pertain to movies at all, but I can see showrunners.
Okay.
Who are they?
Showrunners are on the TV side only, and not even all the TV. I think it's only scripted TV. So like, I don't think on reality shows they have showrunners. But their job is to really make sure the creative aspect of the project stays what it's supposed to be. And, each episode doesn't drift too far left or right. They are simultaneously an executive producer. So they're one of the executive producers. But they're more responsible for making sure everything stays on track creatively and story-wise and tonally, things like that. And they're running the creative side. Directors are on the TV world they're not very important, unfortunately, in a weird way. They did, if anyone's a director or some directors will tell them I said that, but they know that the showrunners run it, and then they come in for an episode. Directors come in for an episode or two. And then there'll be another director, so they're not long-term all that involved in the series. Whereas and that's why you have a showrunner to make sure the directors are keeping everything creatively the same.
Why would a TV show, I know it's outside the element, but why would they possibly bring in a different director to direct episode? I don't quite understand that.
I don't either. I'm sorry. I can make up something, but I really don't know the answer.
I actually do have an answer to it.
Okay, good.
No, because I used to work in television.
Yeah.
The director's job is more than just what's going on the set. There's pre-production, production and post-production, and TV shows, they go from week to the next episode to the next episode to the next episode, and there's a lot of overlap in timing. So while they could be developing, the director's shooting his or her episode, and while they're working on post-production for that episode, they start directing, making the next episode, so you need another director to do that.
Cool, thank you, now I know. Yes?
So when you're shooting on a soundstage, Universal or Warner Brothers, this huge buildings that they've got, the relationship is, that is your producing company, or is it more subtle than that? You're renting out the space from them?
Yes, the latter.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So
But not always. If they're the ones who funded your film, then they'll probably say, come shoot on our stages. But they might not. They might say, hey, if you get a better deal somewhere else, go shoot somewhere else. But usually, just rent it. They usually have a department called Production Services, which markets all their facilities and equipment and stuff for use. And so they're your vendor in terms of that.
Question you may not know the answer to. Is there a reason why Netflix movies tend to have a green cast, because it's not that hard to correct it?
They have what cast?
Green. If you look at a Netflix movie, I'm a commercial photographer, they have a green cast. Why?
I don't know what you mean.
You mean coloring?
Green color.
Greenish shading?
They are cast, if you look at one.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's another question I can't answer. So you like there's this hue, a green hue throughout the whole thing?
Yes.
I don't know. Now you just ruined every Netflix movie for me.
Well, if you watch, and on commercial movies, you don't see that even on TV, and I just wondered what was happening.
I don't know.
Was that a function of your internet provider?
Yeah. I think it could be something with your connection, your device.
You know, because you see other movies that are
Yeah.
perfectly
No,
correct.
I don't know. I have had problems sometimes from, let's say, I think it was Amazon most of it, would buffer all this, would have problems, and other streamers wouldn't. So it could be something similar, but I'm just making up stuff.
I need to find some Indian packet.
Was there something over here?
Amazon doesn't
Yeah.
have it.
There was a company called TV Land, which did TV shows. I know it's not your area, but is that company still around doing episodes or doing pilots?
How long ago was it?
Could be 8 years ago.
Yeah. I don't remember. I remember the name, and I don't remember reading anything about them coming or going, so it's all right.
No data.
Yeah. Yes.
What does inflation do to you guys when you make a budget? Because you
So-
have to plan years ahead.
Yeah. One of my films, the military one that, we didn't talk about it, but anyway, he saw the poster at one time here. When we budgeted it in 2017, I think. And so for a while there, it was like, oh, we got to add all these COVID costs, which we no longer have to do. But things have gone up. Every single person's rate on the crew has gone up, so we will have to adjust that. I mean, I can roughly say, oh, it's going to be like whatever percentage more just by looking at how those rates have gone up. Also on the back end, because of these new deals for the writers and the actors and the directors, I have to consider that some of the revenue that's coming in later will be less for me because they're getting more, which I'm perfectly happy with. We should all get rich together. Yes.
Is AI making your movies easier to make them, or haven't you used it?
I have not used them yet, and I think that generally I'm against. I don't feel it can connect with people as well. It can be as clever as I am, things like that. But there are some tools that are automated that people use all the time. The budgeting, you can just put your screenplay into one of these softwares that's been here for years, and it'll crank out a budget for you. And then you got to go in and adjust it. But there are helpful tools that I think that will be beneficial in general. Yeah.
There's an equipment rental house called Chapman Leonard. You can get dollies, lenses, cameras, lighting, lots of. Is that where everybody gets all their stuff? Is that the brand?
There are at least dozens of those around.
As big as Chapman Leonard?
I've never heard that name, but I haven't shot anything big here. I've only done 3 smaller projects in LA, but so I haven't, and the people I hired brought their own equipment, so I have not had to do that.
Okay, likewise, prop houses. Are there many prop houses?
There are a bunch.
Big ones?
Yeah, there are a bunch. There are some, like for special effects, that are, one of the pictures you saw had a gorilla head, and had a clown, and that was from two of the special effects houses that are, those that make props, they're specifically special effects props. And those are two of the biggest companies around. But just for overall props, and they just have warehouses of props.
Furniture.
Yeah, I think the
costumes,
studios are probably
The periods, and you go
Yeah.
into the,
yeah, I think the studios are probably have the best collections of those things. So Warner Brothers, Universal, and part of their business is to rent that stuff out. But if you find that they're too expensive, then you would seek out a smaller prop house.
is there an extra fee if you blow it up?
I guess you just had to buy it. Or charge you insurance. Yes.
I saw towards the end of your slides where you kind of showed all the positions and stuff that you didn't have time for.
Yeah.
My wife and I like to stay or watch a movie to see all the credits
Mhm.
like that. We're just picking out various things like desk boy, caterer, driver. So does that fall underneath?
Yeah, that's under the hiring. That's the second bullet
You
there.
know what they do, what they stand for?
I do. I know what they do. The best boy is the second level in the electricians or the gaffer department. The gaffer has the lighting. I'm never sure if electrician is in there or they're separate. But anyway, it's called Grip and Electric. Well, Grip is different from lighting. Best boy is that second level down, and it's really the person who runs that part of the crew. The gaffer, who is the top of that department, is doing the bigger planning and procurement and all that stuff for that department. There are best boys in the lighting and also in the grip department. There's best boy grip, and there's a dolly grip. The dolly is the thing that moves around, carry the camera during a shoot. Yeah, greensman is another one I see, and that.
It usually stays to the end because there's so many people that are involved, and I feel it's, they did all that work.
Yeah.
And, I've seen that movie, but they're the ones who did it, so
Yeah.
we stay and just read the names and the different things.
I appreciate
All
it.
those people kind
Yeah.
of do it.
When every once in a blue moon, they put some little cute thing in it.
Yeah,
they
yeah,
did
yeah.
that. They did that before this.
Okay, I run out of time. I appreciate everybody's questions, and I'm always available.